Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CX Live Dialogues. We are delighted to have with us today Kirsty Morris, the Managing Director of Specialist Sales at Barclaycard Payments, who has 23 years of experience in payments and banking. Kirsty has a very strong sales and business development experience, along with having scaled leadership and expertise in niche, new, innovative products and relationships. She has also had experience in commercial strategy, proposition, and taking solutions to the market. As such, today, when we have this conversation with Kirsty, she's in a very good position to help us understand how CX is evolving as we step into 2023. Welcome, Kirsty.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, Kirsty, you have immense experience in the CX domain in different capacities. And I'd like to start with a leading question, and that comes back to the digital transformation that's been so predominant over the last couple of years, that how are CX champions using the digital transformation to drive an omni-channel experience and excellence in customer care?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really fascinating space, isn't it? That's moved at an incredible pace over the last couple of years. And actually, I think the word digital omnichannel is probably the key to that point. I think, I go back in my mind to thinking about what was sort of customer experience, 20 years ago, and what did it mean, customer experience then, to what it means now? Because as a principle, we're all still customers, right? So we sort of still want some of the same things, but how has that evolved? And actually, some of this is making sure that in whichever way I engage as a customer, whether it's retail or hospitality and leisure, that I have a very personal experience to me. I'm treated really well. I have a way to ask questions, raise things that I'm not too happy with. And actually, in any particular way I engage with that particular person selling any of those services, that I feel really good about that interaction. And I think digital omnichannel is probably, the fast forward as to where we are now. The reality is we've seen an explosion of, digital services, but it has to be, I think customer experience still needs to be at the core of any of those services. It shouldn't just be, I think, where people are winning, it's not just about it's fast, it's quick, it's cheap, because it's digital. It has to feel like a really lovely, seamless experience for customers, and that customer care to the point, excellence in care in whichever channel, whether it is digital or not digital for that matter.
You're spot on, Kirsty. And I guess that's the whole point of such massive evolution that we've seen in the last 2 years, that CX leaders must keep pace with all these dynamics as we go through them. Now, what changes should we expect in the next 2 years? And how do these answer the evolving needs of the customer that you just spoke about?
So look, I mean, if only we had a crystal ball. I'll give you my personal, perception of what I think we could be dealing with in the sort of upcoming years. And we see this in Barclaycard Payments data. We see some of it in the dialogue that we have. But my read at the moment is that there is probably two things that we will continue to sort of hear more about and probably see more of. And the first thing is I talk about something called personalization at scale. So I think, very similar to, when I go to my local pub and I want someone to know it's me and they know that I want my gin and tonic. It's a very similar experience. Consumers have got miles more comfortable actually with sharing data. If I go sort of 5 years back, consumers are very wary about how much information they would put into a digital space. Actually, consumers have really adapted that behavior now and feel miles more comfortable to share more of themselves. Now, the challenge with that is it's a two-way contract. If I give you information about myself, I expect you to use in a way that benefits me. So if I'm telling you all these things, I want you to give me a service that feels like it's designed for me and not everybody else, because it's my information. So I think personalization at scale, I think, is something we're going to see as a continued trend. And when you speak to consumers about that, at scale, that is something you hear as messaging, is it wants to feel right for me. And the other space that I think is going to be really interesting, that's almost interlinked to that, is rewarding me for the right things. So actually that real skill in having the right reward mechanism, so it's not just feeling like it's personal, but actually I feel really rewarded in the right way. So it may not be, a monetary reward, it may be experiential reward, because you know enough about me that you reward me for my engagement with you in a way that feels really like lovely and delightful to me as a person. So I think if you think about the evolving needs of a customer, we're becoming slightly more diva as consumers, and we're prepared to share, but we do want more in return.
Definitely. And I think those 2 points that you've touched upon are so important right now: personalization and rewarding, the key clients and their behaviorisms. I think you are right that that's going to stand out. I guess one of the other things that we're seeing come up quite importantly is also empathy. And I think that touches back to what you just said about rewarding and about making sure that you're listening to them. Now, given that there's all this different challenge that we're dealing with, what particular challenge do you feel CIOs and CX leaders are facing when it comes to implementing this change? And what are some of the best ways to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is, that real sort of tension, isn't there, in the ways in which you go about this. Customer experience, particularly in a digital space, is that sort of new trend that is the CIO and the CX lead, sort of having that tussle, whereas when customer experience has always been a really face-to-face thing, you haven't had that same level of friction. So I do think it's a real thing. I think when you also put on top of that regulation and, the just unbelievably vast array of potential options, a CX lead, I think, is definitely putting the customer at the heart of what they do and building out the right, absolute perfect solution. But that conflict for a CIO to find, an appropriate way to do it within regulation, within the multiple choices that they have, I think that is probably a more challenging space than it was 5 years ago. I think, the way I think that it has to be dealt with is I think we have to be prepared to be slightly more agile. I think customers' demands, they sort of do change and evolve quite quickly. I think we have to be really conscious of regulation and protecting customers as well. So I think it does worry me sometimes when I see incredible customer experience, but as a payments geek, self-professed payments geek, kind of like, oh yes, but that doesn't feel like we're totally protecting the customer. So I do think there is, a real balance to be struck, and I think it is a balance between, whether it's the right tech deployment, the right customer experience, but also protecting customer under the right regulatory umbrellas. I think if you get those three things right, you're onto something. But I do think it is a battle, and I think there is tension there that probably is new for a lot of organizations to contend with.
So as a business leader yourself, Kirsty, when you're looking at all these tensions and you're looking at all these changes that need to be incorporated, if Barclaycard Payments had to make one change when addressing CX, what should it be?
I mean, it's a brilliant question, and one, that we wrestle with ourselves. I think, something you mentioned earlier is something that I talk about quite a lot in the payments business, which is listening to our customers. Yeah. I think it's just at the core of everything we do. And actually, if you really listen to customers, back to that sort of point of tension, as a sort of payments business that's embedded within, a huge heritage bank, actually the regulation and making sure that we're doing all the right things for our customers in the right way actually plays to our strength in the experience that we give our customer. Because customer experience isn't just, that few seconds of a payment journey. It's the overarching experience I get from engaging with that particular supplier of whatever service end to end. So I think, embracing regulation, listening to our customers, and being the voice of a customer inside. Again, many organizations have, it's very common, isn't it, that you go into your little tunnel and actually, continually having that break that says, is this the right thing for our customer? Is this the optimum customer experience we want to achieve or not? Are we sacrificing something for a worse customer experience? And making sure that we challenge. So I guess whether it's for Barclaycard Payments or any payments businesses, or honestly any organization at the minute, I think for me the advice is always So just stop, ask the question at multiple different points in that journey, and make sure that we're really, really honest with ourselves. And you know what? Ask customers. It's okay to go and ask customers, how does this feel? We don't, you know, we sometimes think we know the answers and they surprise you. So that's my advice to my own business as well as others, honestly.
And that's totally spot on, isn't it, Kirsty? What a wonderful way to summarize it. And we really wish you all the very best in 2023 and look forward to having a chat with you, maybe in the front end of 23 to see how things are going and where you see the evolution happening. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lovely conversation.
Likewise. We'll catch up with you later.